About a year ago, I did a video with my pitch for a GTA movie, and I had a lot of fun doing it, so I fancied doing another one. GTA is a franchise that's never had an official film adaptation. So for this one, I thought I'd look at a franchise that's had a lot of official film adaptations that have never gotten it right. I actually loved the Resident Evil movies when I was a kid. They're fun enough zombie, sci-fi, popcorn entertainment, and as a 10-year-old, I didn't look any deeper than that. But as I got a bit older and played the games, I realized what a massive waste of potential they were. I don't have a ton of experience with the Resident Evil games because I'm kind of a scaredy cat. I can watch horror films all the live long day. It doesn't matter how intense or gruesome they are, I'll watch them with a smile on my face. But horror video games are a totally different beast. Horror films are a passive experience. Whatever problems the characters are facing on the screen are theirs to deal with. You can just sit back and watch. But when you've got a controller in your hands and there's a chainsaw wielding maniac running at you, it's up to you to run away. And if you're not fast enough or you hit a dead end, you're screwed. It's an incomparable thrill, but my poor anxious heart can only take that thrill in small doses. I love the look of that new game Ill, but I'm not going near it with a 10-foot pole. I'll watch someone else play it. So I'm not an expert in the Resident Evil franchise. I know the basics of the mythology and all the major characters, but I don't know any of the deep cut stuff. But I think I know enough to determine what a Resident Evil movie would need to really work. There is actually another Resident Evil movie on the way, and it sounds more promising than any of the previous films. Barbarian Zach Kreger is directing, it's reportedly set to shoot in the Czech Republic, and it's set to be released on the 18th of September 2026. I can't wait to see what Kreger does with the property. He's one of the most exciting new voices in horror cinema. That catacombs sequence in Barbarian with the reveal of the mother is ripped straight from a Resident Evil game. But if Kreger dropped out and I was the one rebooting the Resident Evil franchise, this is what I'd do with it. On a fundamental, broad strokes mission statement level, a Resident Evil movie has to be faithful to the characters and storylines and mythology of the games, but it also has to be faithful to the B-movie camp.
Where's everyone going? Bingo?
Welcome to Raccoon City was much more faithful to the source material than the earlier Alice films, but it was nowhere near as much fun. It's a more or less by-the-numbers adaptation of the first two games, but it didn't really work because it tried to cram in way too much stuff. It brought in all the main characters at once and didn't give any of them enough time to make a lasting impression. Plus, the straightforward survival horror of those games didn't really translate to a filmed medium. You're basically just watching them wander around a mansion and a police station, picking off zombies and trying to stay alive. It's like watching someone else play the game without the thrill of holding the controller yourself, which is an issue with a lot of video game movies, like the Alicia Vikander Tomb Raider film. You can't just do a live-action reenactment of gameplay, because that'll just be a lesser experience of the game. You need a story that moviegoers can get emotionally invested in. A new Resident Evil movie shouldn't try to establish too much lore and world building up front. That was Welcome to Raccoon City's biggest problem. It crammed in as many characters and storylines and sequel setups as it could fit, but there's no use setting up a cinematic universe if no one wants to come back. What makes this franchise interesting isn't all the intricacies of the world building, it's the world itself. The texture, the atmosphere, the increasingly bizarre and extravagant monster designs. The sooner we can get to the zombie-infested creep show, the better. You don't really need to set up the world. It's not that complicated. Big Pharma created a world-ending zombie virus and it got out of the lab and ended the world. We don't need a whole movie explaining how that happened like we got in the original film series. You can just plunge the audience into that post-apocalyptic world and leave them to figure out how it happened from context. If you really want, you can throw in some text at the beginning that explains how the apocalypse happened, but I really don't think it's necessary. You don't really need to set up a franchise. If you build it, they will come. You just need to focus on making a really scary, really action-packed movie with a good story and compelling characters. I'd start with Resident Evil 4. It's the most popular game in the franchise by far, but more importantly, it's the best standalone story in the franchise. It's non-stop action with a simple goal and clear stakes. Leon S. Kennedy is sent to find and rescue the president's daughter, who's been abducted by a cult living in a creepy village in the middle of nowhere. It's Escape from New York meets The Wicker Man, but with zombies. The plot provides a steady stream of set pieces with the forward momentum of the search for Ashley, the ticking clock of their Las Plagas infection, and the emotional drive of Leon's increasingly protective relationship with Ashley. This story is a great introduction to the world. It gives you a feel for it without having to explain too much. It dives right into the action and the spectacle and the terror, and it's a self-contained, clean break from the overarching lore of Umbrella and the T-Virus that could easily stand on its own as a complete story if it never becomes a long-running franchise. You can get to Raccoon City and the Umbrella Corporation later if you're lucky enough to get a sequel. We can worry about that further down the line. For the first film, just worry about getting audiences interested in this franchise, and you'll definitely get their attention with the best Resident Evil story out there. You don't need to change the plot at all. It's structured like a movie, so you can do a more or less like-for-like adaptation. The game is already conveniently split into 3 acts: the village, the castle, and the island. The village sets the mood perfectly and introduces the mysteries of the cult. The castle confines the action to a haunted house to focus the plot and start to answer some of those mysteries. And the island is the big climactic action-packed finale. You'd obviously have to streamline a few things since you can't have a 15-hour movie, so I'd start by cutting out all the goofy stuff that kills the terror. That means no Robo Salazar. Maybe cut the bit where you play as Ashley too. There's some spooky stuff in that section with the ghost knights, but it's ultimately kind of a pointless detour. I know everyone loves him, but there's no need for the interludes where the merchant buys herbs and gemstones off you and sells back weapons upgrades. That character is great, but he's purely a function of gameplay.
Hello, stranger.
If you cut out most of the traversal and all the parts where you're looking around for keys to get through doors, you've got the perfect jumping off point for a quintessential action horror film.
Christ.
And that brings us to the tone. A Resident Evil movie needs to have the right mix of action and horror. The games are the perfect intersection of the two. Intense combat scenarios in dark, terrifying, monster-infested environments. But it also needs a healthy dose of campness and absurdism. The games don't take themselves too seriously, so the movie shouldn't either. It's a tricky line to walk, genuinely tense and frightening, but also kinda silly and ridiculous. Resident Evil 4 is the perfect blend of those things, so just keep using the game as your North Star.
What are we gonna do, Leon?
Hate to say it, but we're sandwiched all right.
Leon is a zombie-slaying John Wick, so you need to get the best fight choreographers in Hollywood to do justice to some of those kill animations. The headshots, the neck stabs, the suplexes, the roundhouse kicks. Find a production design team who love the games as much as the team who did The Last of Us. Say what you will about the writing of HBO's The Last of Us, I've certainly had my fair share of criticisms, but the look of the show is spot the fuck on. You need to capture the atmosphere as effectively as the game, with a thick layer of mist over the entire village, and the perfect soft lighting where you can't see too far ahead of you but you can see just enough to be disturbed by what you do see. You also have to escalate the monsters. In the games, each boss is wildly different than the last, but also significantly scarier and more intimidating. This is a gameplay technique. It makes the combat trickier and trickier throughout the game, but it would work just as well in movie form, because it makes the horror and gore and action crazier and crazier as the story goes on. Start off with the typical brainwashed zombie cultists and the occasional brute or chainsaw guy, then introduce the plaga heads, then bring in the zealots when you get to the castle, then eventually scare everyone's pants off with the regenerators. The musical score in the remake, credited to Kota Suzuki, Nozomi Emoto, and Misao Senbogi, pardon the horrible pronunciation of all those names, goes way harder than it needed to. It really enhances the atmosphere and the tension and adds to the cinematic feel of the game. They could repurpose that score for the movie adaptation, the same way The Last of Us reused Gustavo Santaolla's music from the games. The casting is crucial because fans are really attached to these characters, and most of the previous film versions have fucked up the casting. I enjoyed Hannah John Kamen as Jill Valentine, and I really liked Ali Larter as Claire Redfield, but the rest can get fucked. Leon Kennedy is a really tough role to cast, because it has to be someone who can be genuinely cool and badass, but also pull off that haircut. The previous movie versions of Leon got the hair right, but they had no charisma or personality. Robert Pattinson is a popular fan casting for Leon, and honestly I think he'd be perfect. I can't imagine anyone better for Leon than emo Batman. Jensen Ackles would have been great about 10 years ago, especially if he brought some of that soldier boy snark, but he's a bit too old now. I mean, you could just do an open casting call and find a lesser known actor who's perfect for the part, but it'll really help your chances at the box office to have a big name like R. Pats attached. Hollywood would probably cast Jack Black as Leon since he's in every video game film. And while he's completely wrong for the part, I would also watch the hell out of a Resident Evil 4 movie starring Jack Black as Leon, singing little song snippets about kicking barrels and mixing herbs while he mows down zombies. Leon Leon is far and away the most important casting to get right in this movie, but there are a ton of great supporting characters in the game too. For Ashley Graham, I'd go with McKenna Grace or Kiernan Shipka. Ashley's kind of annoying in the game, so you need someone who's lovable enough to offset that. Elle Fanning could be great as the new and improved Ashley from the remake. I'd go with Tatiana Maslany or Rosario Dawson as Hunnigan, because it needs to be someone who can bring personality to straight exposition. I know Pedro Pascal is in everything, but he'd be perfect as Luis Serra, and it would fit his Sean Bean tradition of playing characters who die an untimely death. Diego Luna would also be a great Luis. Lord Sadler, the cult leader, has a relatively small role, but he's one of the most significant characters in the story. That role needs an actor with gravitas, intensity, mystery, villainy, intimidating presence. You could go with Ralph Fiennes, Javier Bardem, Mads Mikkelsen, Ralph Ineson, Jason Isaacs. There's a ton of guys who would do something really interesting with it. Anthony Starr is so perfect for Albert Wesker, I can't believe it hasn't happened yet. And Danny DeVito or Warwick Davis would bring the right eccentricity to Ramon Salazar. For Krauser, you'd need one of these tough guy military actors like Frank Grillo or Alan Ritchson. And the only person I can picture for Ada Wong is Deacon Lackman from Severance.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. 1 second, please.
Please, Mr. Kennedy, I don't wanna go.
Don't shoot me in the outer space.
Oh, please, Mr. Kennedy, I don't wanna go.
Don't shoot me in the outer space.
So there you have my pitch for a Resident Evil movie. I would basically just take Resident Evil 4 and film it in live action, which honestly sounds a hell of a lot better than any of the movies we've actually gotten. As always, Hollywood, if you're listening, I'd be happy to write this up into a full screenplay for a hefty but reasonable fee, and I want back end. Whatever Robert Pattinson's getting, I want double that. Or alternatively, I'll waive my right to monetary compensation entirely if Capcom agree to make me a boss in the next Resident Evil game. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you liked the video. Remember to like and subscribe and click on the little bell. And also seize the day and call your mom and be kind to yourself.